they have to accommodate whatever that law may be. So it could be that it's a system where there's one fair wage and the tipping continues. Eventually, what we have seen is that they transition out of a current model and they then adopt a new business model, which may be a service charge model. And that service charge then is on the check. Menu prices will increase slightly, and they do have to shrink their workforce. Those are the three things we know in all of those markets. And that is what also suggests that the tipping has subsided and that the service is included in the check. So that is the feedback that we get. We've been hearing it directly from operators in those markets, and job loss was at the top of what had to happen in order for them to be able to absorb those costs.
Does anyone on the pro side speak to the national picture of tip minimum wages in other states, other places?
Sure. So I do think when we look at this issue that we can't look into a crystal ball or shake our magic 8 ball to figure out what's going to happen. The best thing to do is to look to other places that have implemented the same policy that we're talking about today. And I don't really think it's fair, Kathy, to say that DC is unique. It just makes it hard to ever have an argument because it comes up all the time. DC is unique. We can't make that comparison. We can't make that comparison. The only logical comparison we have are those other states. I've eaten in restaurants in Minnesota, in California, in Washington State. I've never had a service charge there. If people can show, if there's evidence that show most restaurants in those states do a service charge and they don't tip, then that's great evidence. But what I've read, in San Francisco, the average tipping rate is 19% and workers make $13 an hour. So the notion that people aren't getting tips is just not based on the facts that I know from the evidence that's been provided.
We have 3 more panel questions, then we're going to go to audience questions. So if you have your note cards, start scribbling furiously, please. Okay, my question is for Jill, and you've touched on this briefly, but I'm hoping you can dig in a little further because, you know, restaurants aren't just the people serving the food, they're the people cooking the food. And I'll preface this with that Jose Andres came out last week against Initiative 77. His main argument was that servers currently earn much more, he says up to 100% more than back-of-house positions like line cooks. Other opponents have similarly said that if the tip minimum wage goes up, wages in the back of the house will stagnate because there's not enough money to kind of give folks raises. At Tail of Goat, and you and I have talked about this, you already take measures to level the playing field between servers and cooks. Which I think is a really unique model. If you don't know, some of her line cooks take shifts in the front of the house so that occasionally they get to partake in tips. So I'm curious of how, you know, if 77 were to pass, how would it impact your current business model and your employees on both the front and the back?
So every way we run the numbers, they're sobering. And that's why I'm here. It's because I'm concerned as a small business owner that my business will not survive and I will not be able to continue to create the safe, equitable work environment that we are working so hard, and so many other small businesses who I consider as part of my class in DC who are opening restaurants. The industry is changing, and I will say DC is unique because we have employees that we can lose to Maryland and Virginia. They are a 10-minute Uber ride away, so that is different. Specifically, some of the things we are worried about is this would add $24,000 a year at minimum for each one of our tipped workers. I have 11 tipped workers. That's a huge number when you think about it, and you multiply that by 11, we're talking over $250,000, and that's before we talk percentage rent, it's before we talk about payroll taxes, and it's before we lose the FICA tip credit, which again, when we're saying we can compare ourselves to San Francisco, they have not worked under a FICA tip credit, so they didn't have to change their business model. They were only raising their minimum wage about $4 an hour, so that's very different. Credit, depending on how large your payroll is anywhere between $100,000 to, let's say, $170,000 for most businesses like me. So there's another huge hole we're eating. We have always kind of recognized the disparity between front and back. I've been a tipped worker since I was 15. It's how I paid for American University. It's how I got to the point where I could open my own business and take lessons learned. My husband was a line cook when we met, and it was really clear the difference in our take-home pay, and something we have talked so much about. Before we opened, we sat down with, our other business partner Bill and our investor Kevin, and said we have this crazy idea. It's an investment in our in our cooks. We are going to pay them their full cook wage when they are a front of house employee. So we are not breaking any rules as far as it comes to tip pools. I want to make that clear. They work in a separate position 1 day a week where they get to be part of the tip pool.
Cool. Okay. Any rebuttals, folks? All right. Go ahead, B. Thanks.
I'm really happy to hear that you've had the success you've had. Working in this industry, the waiters that I know, the bartenders that I know, they don't have retirements. We're working and we have to work until we drop dead, basically.
I need to rebut to that because I've been doing this since I was 15 so that I could create this space for myself. I believe that one of the most special things about our industry is there is very little barrier to entry to a job that allows you to be a middle class worker. And as you get better and you continue to hone your skills, you can move up, which is what I did.
That's a wonderful thing. What you're saying is very nice. I'm not being sarcastic when I say I'm happy for you. But I am saying that a lot of people my age